All my troubles seem so. Welcome back, everybody. How are you doing? Long time no see, right? You guys tired of me yet? In case you stumbled in here by accident, this is United versus Everybody, the Manchester United fan channel that is basically for you, powered by you, sustained by you. It is what it is because of you, the UVE community. I am just your host, Sean. I'm just here to throw out the topics, facilitate the conversation, and really just get you guys involved. So, welcome back. Some fun news dropping today as the Premier League held another meeting of the clubs to discuss a few different topics. Those are topics that we are going to be discussing here as well. Danny B already in the house. Little sing song. You know what, man? Sometimes it's so funny. I do love to sing. I'm here by myself so often, just with scheduling and stuff, and so I sing all the time, sing to my dogs when we're walking. I just sometimes I don't realize that I'm doing it. So was I honestly don't even know what was I singing? Tell me what I was singing. I really don't even know. I think sometimes it takes a little while for when I hit the start streaming button for it to start. So sometimes I just get it. Maybe it's an ADD thing again. I don't know, but anyway, it's good to see you, my PIC in the scouting department. Little bit of news to discuss today. It's going to be. It's informative. We'll call it that. It's a nice way of saying it's probably a little boring, but it does pertain to United. It could see us impacted in terms of what we can spend and whatnot moving forward. So we're going to talk about that. First up, though, big news. Lisandro Martinez has successfully undergone surgery on his ACL. Remember, he did his ACL recently. It's expected that his recovery could take anywhere from 6 months to a year. That's a big gap right there. It's basically saying it could take 6 months or it could take double that time. That's coming from Mike Keegan anyway. Again, like we've spoken about recently, I wouldn't plan on him being fully fit again, probably until middle next fall, maybe. Just not only just recovery, but just you having to get back up to match fitness. And we saw sometimes that can take a while. Remember when he hurt his foot and then he came back and then he had to redo it? Like, it takes a while. I mean, it's just like Tyrell Malacia when he was out for that long. I mean, he hasn't looked match fit since he's been back. In any case, again, we do need a CB this summer. We do really need to go check out center halves. If you want to get some idea of who I would recommend, I know I keep plugging it, but I'll just keep throwing it out there because I forget to take the link out of the description, so it's still there. But there is a link in the description for my video I did on Licha replacements. All left-sided center backs, all have fighting mentality, all very, very good on the ball. Three qualities that I think we have to try to replace in Lisandro Martinez because really he is the only center back that I think suits the system we play to a T in terms of being good on the ball, progressive passing, driving out from the back. Now an argument can be made that Mazraoui is decent at driving out from the back. Like Danny says, that first phase of attack, really bringing that ball out of defense. He's not a center back, though. In this system, that's probably Mazraoui's best position, but he's not a center back. So go check out that video in any case. Hit that like button if you can for me. Subscribe to the channel. Danny doesn't know what I was singing. I don't even, honestly, like I said, it's just like a subcon. I don't even know I'm doing it half the time. Rob, good evening, my friend. It's evening for you. It is almost 3 o'clock for me. So good to see you, though. Danny says Housen and Bashali for free to replace Lindelof. Martinez. Yeah, I wouldn't mind that. Those two are probably going to want to start. Do they start? I think those two and like Delit maybe in the center of that three, Danny, could be a really good start right there. And I think you're going to need to rotate a little bit as well. I would like to see at least 5 first team ready center halves. But we'll see. We got Aiden Heaven waiting in the wings. I'm still waiting for FC25 to add him to the roster. I don't know why he's not in the game. He did play a couple minutes for Arsenal in the Carabao Cup, so he should be in there already. I'm still waiting to start my new career mode. So, but good to see everybody. Moving on to the big news. So the big news of the day, this comes from Martin Ziegler, reporting from the Times. Could have implications on every Premier League club, Manchester United, Manchester City. As United fans, it could impact our club's financial abilities in the transfer market in the future. Could be an indicator of where the Premier League clubs stand in terms of what they think is going to happen with Man City and their case. I'm, of course, talking about PSR, the profit sustainability rules that exist within the Premier League, and how those rules could actually be replaced next year. Now, as Ziegler reports, the Premier League have opted to keep the PSR regulations in set for 1 year, so at least until the end of next season. But there have been proposals or have been options, and they're holding off on that, and I will talk about why that is. So this decision was made today. They had a meeting today in London after there were a couple of delays caused from some legal issues and whatnot, in terms of an agreement on what a new system would look like, so what a replacement system for PSR would look like. Honestly, I think that clubs are just tired of having to sell their top young prospects just to abide with the rules, if that makes sense. I think it doesn't. We can't complain like where are all the young players, when everyone's got to sell them basically just to make ends meet. I get both sides. We're going to talk about that a little bit as well. I mean, as United fans, we're kind of all becoming little mini experts on PSR in the last year or so, right? We're just tired of hearing about it. I mean, we did see the effects of it start to kind of increase a little bit this past summer, especially when we had to sell McTominay, for instance, just to get Ugarte over the line. We had to sell Wan-Bissaka for a huge loss, but that 15 million we brought in for him is what allowed us to get the Mizraoui stuff over the line. Still the steal of the century, but it's affected other clubs in other ways as well. You know, aside from United, Newcastle, Aston Villa, they've all kind of argued that PSR is constraining them in the transfer market. Liverpool obviously didn't do a whole lot of business because, again, it has to do with selling players. Arsenal haven't really sold a lot. They spent a lot on Declan Rice. You know, City people were complaining City got to spend a lot in January because City sold Julian Alvarez and Cole Palmer in the last year or so. Failure to comply with PSR also is what saw Everton and Nottingham Forest docked points last season and face those punishments. And then you still have Leicester, who are still involved in their own PSR case as well right now. So it's rearing its ugly head. I still maintain that the league is cracking down to set precedent. So to go after City the way they did, I think without precedent, it does make your case a little harder to get over the line. So originally, this brings us back to the meeting. Originally, it had been proposed to implement a replacement for PSR at the end of the current season. But again, the clubs met today and they decided to extend that for another year. So this means another year where they're going to be limited to the amount of money. Again, your PSR, your max, you can lose like 100 million over 3 seasons. It doesn't include things like infrastructure, youth players, and women's football. None of that is included as well. And then again, if you remember, the rules for PSR were relaxed during COVID. They actually combined the financial restrictions from the 2019-2020 to in 2020-2021 seasons. They combined them to make one season, basically, because obviously clubs lost a lot of revenue because fans weren't allowed at the stadium. So a lot of that plays into this. So if you're keeping up with me, fair play. So that brings us to the 2 proposed replacement systems that could go into effect. They have yet to decide on one, but there are 2 systems right now that they are looking towards. So one is called the squad cost ratio rule, which is SCR. I think PSR is easy to say, but I think it's kind of lost its luster. So with an SCR, the squad cost ratio, what this does is it limits what clubs can spend to 85% of their revenue, and that goes towards player wages, transfers, and agent fees. So basically it's saying up to 85% of what you bring in is allowed to go towards basically the stuff that PSR used to go for, if that makes sense. The other option is called anchoring. Hakuna Matata, welcome back, man. Good to see you, or woman. Good to see you again. No worries, right? The other rule is called anchoring. And what that does is that sees the top team's spending on player costs restricted to 5 times what the amount of what the bottom club receives in TV and prize money on those player costs. That one just to me seems like way too many moving parts, basically. So it's anchoring you to what the bottom club in your league is making on the same thing. It's really, really dumb. You guys keeping up so far? um, and I think that the fact that we're having to already look at these other options, like I said in the description, like why we're having changing. Football is making so many changes to its rules. It's really, really annoying. And like I said, as United fans, we know all about the profits and the losses and the debts and all that stuff. You know, if you remember, recently a couple fan groups, whether it's the 1958 or Must, wrote letters, open letters to basically the United, trying to basically push them to do things differently, trying to come up with different ideas. United responded to them saying, if we don't act now, we are in danger basically of failing to comply with PSR and stuff. It's all a bit ridiculous. Danny says lost already. I know. It's really dumb, Danny. I think the anchoring one is the one that's going to confuse a lot of players. So, like, again, I'll read you what I have here. So, again, anchoring, which limits how much clubs could spend on player wages and transfers to 5 times the revenue the league's bottom club receives in broadcast money. So, the example that Sky gives, Sheffield United received 110 million last season. That means under this anchoring rule, the spending limit would be 5 times 110 million, so 550 million. So whatever the bottom club receives, so Sheffield 110 million, other clubs are allowed to spend up to 5 times that much, so 550 million. So basically it's telling you how much you can spend based on how much the worst club in your league makes with the TV revenue and whatnot. Does that make a little more sense? Trust me, reading this shit, I'm like, I feel like at the end of this, I should be able to call myself like a football financial expert. Kieran McGuire hit me up. Hakuna Matata's a lost story. Did that make a little more sense when I explained given the example that Sky gives? Rob says, I'm going to take a degree in accounting. I think we can all pretty much call ourselves accountants after this. This is how I feel about veterinarians. But my dogs have had so many issues, from ACLs to disc issues to liver, kidney. Like, I spent so much time at the vet, even just when I got home from my trip last week or a couple weeks ago. I literally feel like a veterinarian. I just know shit now. But does that make sense now? So basically, like, you're allowed to, like, the example, Sheffield United made 110 million. Under the anchoring rule, other clubs would be able to spend up to 5 times that much, 550 million. So it's a little ridiculous. Danny says, yeah, we need Slab, Cass, Rashford gone. Yeah, the wages are what's killing us. If that makes sense. So Rob Tass, so 550 million over 3 years, I believe so. Danny says maybe even Bruno. Yeah, you guys know how I feel about Bruno. If a big Saudi club came in for him again, I would definitely take anything over 50, 60, 70. And we saw those rumors of like 100+ million going out last year. So if anybody comes in with that kind of money again, you take it. So again, the PSR, the financial situation, especially at United, it's caused a lot of opinion. People have a lot of thoughts. Like I said, Must, the 1958, they wrote letters to the club. The club responded, talking about how it's, short-term pain for long-term sustainability, baby. PSR, is just one of those things that's going to draw different opinions. Clubs have opinions, fans have opinions. I think some people argue that PSR and FFP only benefit big clubs. I don't agree. Though the people who introduced the system, right, they'll argue that the aim is to ensure that clubs operate within their means, basically, in order to avoid becoming like another Bury. Like, you don't want to. It's even like at the semi-pro level here in Michigan. Like, one of the things they tell you at this level is you should only have a certain amount, like 10 to 20% of your funds coming from outside sponsorships, because if you lose those sponsorships, you want to be able to sustain yourself. If you're just relying on sponsorships, that's not a good look, because anything can happen. Like the club that I was at before I got there, they had supposedly locked up a sponsorship deal with a healthcare thing, and then that healthcare thing had to make cuts, and they couldn't do that, and so that meant that club really didn't get new uniforms that year. Like, that's what that means, basically. Rob says 550 million is a good budget for transfers and wages. It can be. The problem is, and we'll talk about this a little bit. It's these kind of things only work if literally the entire world does it, because you don't want to be the only league in the world who's got limitations, as bigger clubs like City, like United, like Newcastle, they've argued like it's not allowing them to fairly compete with other leagues in terms of attracting players and signing players. Now, I don't feel bad for City because fuck City, but again, a lot of people are also very critical of PSR because it sort of forces you, if you want to strengthen, you're basically forced to sell your young homegrown players, like I said, for profit reasons. So I hear all the arguments, I hear all the reasons. It all has merit. It's all valid, right? Um, Danny says Newcastle got screwed. Yeah, Newcastle did get a little shafted. I mean, if they sell some players, again, this is why people like, and I'm not saying you guys don't understand this. It's just one of these things that a lot of fans I see online and whatnot, are people on YouTube, not like the content creators themselves, just people in general. They don't quite understand, like, because they're crying for Qatari owners. Like, it doesn't matter how rich you are. It doesn't matter if the Sheik came in. Literally, the only thing the Sheik would be able to spend money on would be the women's team, the facilities, and the debt. That's literally, he can't put any more money into transfers and managers and whatnot because we're not allowed to. That's just the way. It doesn't matter how rich you are when it comes to PSR. We've just lost too much money and we haven't made enough money on sales. So that's why we're starting to see more players getting moved out. So now this, Raja, good to see you, my friend. How are you doing? It's been a little minute. Fans or accountants, we're all a little bit mini experts on something these days, right? Whether it's, we all became little mini experts on law when City's charges came down. We all became little mini experts on sporting when Amorim was appointed. We all became mini experts on the 3-4-2-1 when Amorim. We're all little mini experts on everything. Now, don't let the ring light and the camera fool you. I'm not an expert on anything. I'm just here to give my thoughts, share some of the stuff that I've researched, and more importantly, to get your thoughts. But big up, Rajat. Good to see you again. I'm going to drink some more tea. I only drink tea in the afternoon, and I don't drink it all that often, but I usually only get it in the afternoon when I drink it. So, again, the ruling the delay to this ruling, this decision, because again, they met today. The plan was to introduce this new rules this summer. They pushed it a year. Now, this has a lot to do with Manchester City and how other clubs are kind of feeling about this, right? Because according to the Times, other Premier League clubs feel there's no point in voting now to institute new rules until the outcome of Manchester City's actions come to light. Manchester City have a couple of specifically associated party rules that they've been violated or allegedly violated. So they have to be resolved. These rules cover like deals between clubs and third parties, basically, in terms of fair market value for players. Now, again, like the things like Savinho and stuff, like you have to show that you've paid fair market value for these players, especially if they're coming between your two clubs. What's also seen this get delayed a little bit is there's also a legal threat from the PFA, the Professional Footballers Association, which is basically a union for these players, right? In a letter, so a lot of when the initial proposals for alternative options were set forth, the PFA wrote a letter to the Premier League and threatened legal action if it voted through both the SCR, the squad cost ratio rule, and the anchoring rule. Basically, what the PFA is saying is like this is basically in lack of is a salary cap. Basically, that's what it is. And I've seen people suggest salary caps in the past, like you should just put a wage cap. Like someone said, like it's good in theory. A lot of other sports leagues do this. The problem is, again, every league in the world has to have the same salary cap, or else players are just going to go wherever they can get paid more. If the Premier League puts a salary cap on, whether it's called a salary cap or whether these rules sort of implement a salary cap, like again, limiting it to what the lowest 5 times what the lowest team makes, that still limits you. Nobody else in the league can pay more. So again, the Sheffield United, if the anchoring rule is chosen, for instance, Sheffield United make 110 million, every other club can only spend 550 million, 5 times what they make. So basically you're putting a cap on what clubs can spend. That is a cap, basically. Now, so I think that caps in theory work. I think that if you did the anchoring rule, cool. It's also not gonna stop shady deals from being done under the table. Man City. So that's another factor to consider. The PFA is also not happy right now because it was not consulted regarding these proposed options. And the PFA's guidelines dictate that the FA basically has to consult the PFA when it comes to matters that impact player pay and or conditions, basically. So if the league, for instance, voted to pass on these options today to put one of them in, the PFA would have proceeded with legal action against them on behalf of its clients, in this case, the players. Ugh, for fuck's sake, it's always something. There's drama, right? Raja says, why do they care that much when Man City can avoid? Well, we'll see what happens with City. They want to know, because if you implement new rules now, City, you're going to argue that, because one of the City's arguments were the rules and how they're not fair. So if you implement different rules in City, you're going to try to argue about that. If you remember some of that. Danny says, got to get some Irish tea. This is just Earl Grey with a little bit of milk. I don't really do like green tea. I definitely don't do anything fruity or mint. Sometimes if I'm sick, I'll do like just a black tea with a little honey or lemon. But yeah, this is just Earl Grey with a little milk in it. Danny says, yeah, smells fishy. Have a feeling City get away with a lot. Yeah, everyone's like, Raja says, Man City is super corrupt. They somehow keep beating FA. Well, they beat UEFA due to a number of things, one of which I think was a statute of limitations. They took it to the Court of Arbitration for Sport. They don't get to do that with the FA, with the Premier League stuff. And so we're waiting. Supposedly the ruling has been decided. I guess we're just waiting to hear what happens. But we will see what happens with that. But that's part of why the collective Premier League is waiting. They don't want to have these new rules go into place while City's got all this going on. So, and then the PFA, like I said, the PFA is getting involved right now. So it's all kind of crazy. Are you guys tracking a little bit? I know it's a lot. Like I said, this is going to be an informative short stream today because it's a lot. So the gist, basically, all the clubs met today in London for one of their normal meetings. There were an initial proposal to change to a different financial set of regulations instead of PSR to either one of something called a squad cost ratio or the anchoring system. They delayed that a year because they want to know what's happening with City, and they probably right now are trying to figure out some sort of agreement with the PFA so they don't get sued basically for doing this. The league itself is, this could be a shit show for the Premier League. They could face legal proceedings from the PFA, and if, let's say, City are found to be not guilty, for instance, you can bet your ass City are going to countersue the Premier League for all this shit as well. So the Premier League really needs to hope and pray and make sure it knows what it's doing, because that leads to a whole other can of worms in terms of whether or not the league will even be around at a certain point. But that's insane. I don't know what you guys think of all that. Do you have any like suggestions for the PSR? Anything new financial regulations? Is there a system that does work? I don't agree. It's hard, right? Because it's like, if you have a mega rich owner, I don't like telling people how to spend their money, right? I wouldn't like telling people like you can't spend your money the way you want to. It's your club, you own it. But at the same time, it's kind of like anything, you like eBay. Even if you like join eBay, even if you go on Amazon, if you create an Amazon account, when you're doing this, when owners buy Premier League clubs, when clubs are part of the Premier League, of the English Football Association, they then agree to abide by the rules. If you think they're not fair or not, it doesn't matter. If you sign the paper, if you join the league, if you take the money from the TV rights, you're all a part of it. You have to play by the rules. That's just the way it is. So if a rich owner comes in, the rules going into it. You got to follow them. That's just the way it is. Now, you can work to try to change the rules, but you can't cheat until the rules are changed. That's not cool. Danny says, no more huge transfer fees like in the past. And I think what we're seeing right now is you're seeing it slow down. Spending in January is the lowest it's been in a while. And I think that what you're seeing is clubs, like, it was a free-for-all for a couple of years, right? With the Neymar, the Mbappe, all this shit, the Grealish shit, United buying Pogba, Lukaku, all of it. But what clubs are starting to see is like, that's that's not sustainable. You can't do that. And we're right now, as United fans, we know firsthand, like we are seeing like the result of that, like the consequences of extravagant spending means you can't buy anybody else because we bought for too much, we pay people too much, we lose so many players for free, and we never sell players. And so it was just this past summer we started to move on some players, see some profit. We had Henderson before that. We made a little money, Dan James, Greenwood, McTominay, Kambwala. We got a lot of sell-on fees for a lot of these other players. Alvaro as well, throw him in there. Elanga. And so we're starting to do it, but the problem is we were so much in the shit that it and we've sacked so many managers, and again that counts against PSR. We hired Dan Ashworth, we sacked Dan Ashworth, we paid to bring Amorim in, staff. All that stuff counts against you as PSR is concerned. That's why we're working so hard to get guys like Rashford off the books. We'll get Casemiro, Eriksson, Lindelof, Evans will be off the books probably in the summer. Probably need to sell somebody else. We're probably going to see another youngster get sold. Probably someone like Amas. I wouldn't be surprised if Harry Amas is sold in the summer. I think that if a League One, League Two, or even a Championship side comes in for him, I can very easily see him leaving. If Ipswich go down, I can see Leif Davis leaving Ipswich, and I can see Harry Amas going to Ipswich, for instance. So Rob says, hopefully debt doesn't get included as we be screwed. Yeah, problem is we're not ever paying down the debt because we're struggling just to pay the interest on the debt. We were paying dividends for so long instead of paying off the debt, and we have to pay interest. This is why people with student loans are basically screwed, because the interest rates on these things are so high. It's you struggle just to pay the interest rate, let alone the actual debt. It sucks. It really does. So that's the situation that we've been in because of the Glazers. They didn't spend any money. The kids that are still alive, because remember, it was Malcolm who bought the club, basically he just kept accumulating Class B shares until it was a takeover, basically. The kids inherited it, so they didn't do anything to earn it, so they have no appreciation for it whatsoever. I doubt they could go to Dick's Sporting Goods and pick a football out of any of the aisles, let alone have any semblance of a shred of knowledge about the actual ins and outs of the game itself. But now we have new structure. We've got a new guy who's coming in. Yes, a lot of decisions are not great right now. There's a lot of bad PR recently. It is what it is. I don't agree with all of what Ineos and Sir Jim have doing. I think a lot of it has also been really negatively spun by the media and the fans, but it is what it is. We've talked about that. Hakuna Matata says a Casemiro loan to Flamengo done. The last I heard, it was just a rumor. But, I mean, that was a couple days ago. I haven't seen anything else since. Not a whole lot of transfer news going on today. But, yeah, we were just talking about that the other day. It was just a rumor. I haven't seen anything else yet. But among the other items discussed today at the meeting was offside, specifically the introduction of semi-automated offside technology. Like we've seen this used in World Cups, we've seen this used in FIFA competitions again, a little bit in Champions League, if you guys have been watching. But now clubs in the England leagues have also agreed to use semi-automated technology for offside, starting with the fifth round of the FA Cup, which is just a couple weeks away. So we could see it in action for our cup tie against Fulham on March 1st, I think that is. And then if successful, if it's well received and it seems to be working right, not like any new technology because VAR is shit show. If it does, though, then it's going to be adopted in the Premier League towards the end of the season. So we could see semi-automated offside maybe even before the end of the season, which I don't agree with. Now, Danny, I agree on semi-automated offside. What I don't agree with, Danny, is when things like that are introduced mid-season. I think you've already started the season. There are already decisions who probably would have benefited from it being. It's not fair to, for my opinion, to introduce it mid-season. This is why I don't like VAR being in use for some FA Cup matches and not others. This is why I don't like how certain grounds don't have the infrastructure to hold the technology, like we saw it against like Newcastle or something last season. Like they only had one camera angle for supposedly a ball going out of bounds when we could have had a goal because of the infrastructure. Like I don't like I don't like introduction of rules, changing rules like handball, subjective offside and shit mid-season. And just wait until the end of the season, start it fresh next season, and go from there. Like I said, I don't have a problem with any of it really, if it's done well, but I don't like any. That's all, and that's just how I feel about that. But we'll see. You guys happy with that? Are you all for more technology in the game? Are you all for semi-automated offside? I mean, semi-automated offside, unlike VAR, because remember, VAR is a person. I think that calling it VAR kind of makes it seem more of a technology thing, like blaming the calculator. No, VAR is still a person. Semi-automated offside, though, that takes the human aspect right out of it, right? So I think the less we have to rely on shit refereeing, the better we all are going to be happy with, right? So anyway, something interesting always happens when the Premier League clubs meet up, right? You never know. You want to read a really interesting story about that? There's a book behind me called The Club. Go check that out if you want to. It's by Joshua Robinson. That book was written, I think, 2016, 15, 2017. There's a chapter in there about the Super League. So 4 or 5 years before that went out, there's a chapter in there about all the secret meetings that these clubs were having regarding the Super League. So this stuff was in effect long before. So whenever clubs get together, to me, it's never anything good happens. It will be interesting to see how all this pays out. The Premier League doesn't like PSR, but they don't want to change it until the case is finalized for City. Even if the rules change, the PFA might seek legal action depending on what the options are. It's all a fucking mess. It's all ridiculous. Hakuna Matata says it's 2025 and the Premier League VAR is still using putting ruler in front of screen. You get me? Yeah, no, VAR is a joke because they just, like, when you listen to some of the big controversial decisions and when they release the audio, it's just embarrassing. And then when you got guys like Micah Oliver basically just freaking telling people what to do because he thinks he's the big dick swinging around. Like, Danny says, how much do you think we spend in the summer? I think 100 depending on Rashford sale. You mean like how much, like first installments total, or how much like transfer fee total? Because you could easily see like, oh, we spent 250 in fees, but with amortization that might actually be like 75-80 million between like 4 or 5 players. It just depends. And like you said, it depends on if we can sell Rashford, that could be a really good piece of business for us. But again, we have to start replacing. We have to bring in unless Heaven starts getting minutes, we're going to have to get 2 center backs. If Heaven starts getting minutes and he looks good, maybe one for sure Leach a replacement. Probably going to need another wing back. I do think we need at least 110. We do need another midfielder, maybe 2 midfielders, and we probably need a striker. But I do think that if we get a striker, one of Xerxes and Højlund's got to go, unless you just see Xerxes as one of those 10s, basically, which probably is his best fit in this system, if we're all being honest. So we have a lot that we need to get done. We'll probably do a video later on, probably another month or so, looking at transfer priorities. And then, of course, you guys know me. I'll probably have some options that we'll go through and kind of do some scouting reports on and measuring offside with a bloody ruler. Yeah, it's really weird that the technology used for VR, it looks like someone's making it in like Paint or something on their old like Dell computer. Rob says Avinio's ruled out paying for Gyökeres. So we saw that report earlier from Laurie Whitwell, but again, you have to look at the language used. So what that sounded to me like was more like Laurie Whitwell basically sitting there and saying, I can't imagine Ineos would do this. Like I can't see them doing this. I can't see them paying this much for Gyökeres. If we were getting ready to try to spend a buttload of money on Harry Kane, not this summer, but the summer before, I think that there's nothing that says that we wouldn't. Now, it's a different regime now, but I think that of the strikers available, Gyökeres would definitely be the one top of my list in terms of what we need to be looking at. He knows Amorim, he knows the system. He's one of the best strikers in football. It is I think just the price alone makes Gyökeres like a no-brainer for me. The only other striker, like I said many times, that I would want to spend a lot of money would be Isak, but you're not getting Isak out of Newcastle for anything less than 100. Danny says better not have. Yeah, I think that we definitely need Gyökeres personally. I think he's a good age. He's the kind of age that we might want right now. I think that he and Højlund are very similar in terms of the way they play and their profile. I think that Højlund could learn a lot from Gyökeres as well. Danny says two mids, a wing back, center back, and a 10 and a striker. Yeah, we're gonna need at least 5 players. So Rob says too old. Yeah, the rumor was that they didn't want to spend that much on a 27-year-old, but I think you could get 5 years out of Gyökeres easy, and then you could still sell him to the Saudi league at the end of that if you wanted to extend this contract by the year, sell him for like 50, 60 million to the Saudi league. I could easily and imagine I think we've got Obi coming, Cheeto coming through. We've got Wheatley on loan. I think for those next few years, having him and Højlund rotate, slowly maybe betting in someone like Cheeto or something. I think to me that just makes too much sense to not do. But Danny says if we got 2 good seasons from Gyökeres, I'd be happy. Like 25 goals a season. Yeah, he's definitely going to get you goals. Now we have to do better at getting the ball forward, getting the ball up the pitch. But I think that the difference is Gyökeres is going to make the most out of the chances that he gets, and he's going to have elite movement in that final phase of attack. And that is the big difference. Not because I think he's old. He's more experienced. Remember Gyökeres when he was Højlund's days, can anyone even tell me where he was? Like exactly. He didn't start doing bits until he was 24, 25 at Coventry. It takes time. So give Højlund time. I think I'd still go for Gyökeres. Either Xerxes plays a 10 or we have to find a way to get him out of here personally. Rob says crazy as he'll be in his prime years. Yeah, he's like Danny says, he's definitely in his prime. And for that price, you'd have to be stupid not to do that. Like you have to actively just decide to not think if that's what you're doing that. So I don't know. Anyone watching Europa League today? I watched a little bit of I was watching Fenerbahce versus Anderlecht. Just to watch there's an Anderlecht player that I've been watching for a couple of years that I wanted to see play, so I wanted to see how he was doing. But Sociedad did beat FC Midtjylland, so that's annoying. I'm tired of Spanish opposition. I'd like to avoid Sociedad. I'd like to avoid Galatasaray if possible. Galatasaray are tied right now with AZ Alkmaar, who are the other 2 possible opponents for us in the next round. So, but yeah, Fred and Amrabat pretty much bossed that midfield for Fenerbahce today, if anybody saw that. But it is what it is. I'm probably going to go hit up the Porto-Roma match a little bit because so Porto have a young number 10, Rodrigo Mora, who's playing right now. They play in the 3-4-2-1. We've been linked to him. He's a young teenager, but I wanted to maybe see how he was going to get on too. So, but that is pretty much it in terms of that. Like I said, not a huge news day, but still interesting news nonetheless because it does potentially impact us. It does potentially impact the entire Premier League, not only in terms of their ability to spend and sell, but also potentially some legal action from the PFA if these rules do change. So we will see what's going on. Danny's going to go watch that Porto match. Yeah. That's on right now, I think. So that's going to be it for me, guys. Please like the video if you can. Please subscribe to the channel if you are new. And I will see you guys. So we did the preview this morning for the Spurs match this weekend. We did a little bit of predicting maybe how many points we're going to get from our next couple matches as well. So go ahead and check that out. Leave your predictions in the comments. Leave your total points. Remember, I said I could see us getting 7 points from a possible 12 out of our next 4 matches in the league. So go check that out. Danny's going to go watch Varela. Yeah. It gets to a point with me sometimes, Danny. Like it got to this with Morten Hjulman. Like I'd already watched him at Lecce. I'd seen him at Sporting for a season after Ugarte left. Like I almost don't even have to watch. I don't really have to watch Hayden Hackney anymore. I got to a point with João Neves. Like I don't need to watch João Neves anymore. I know João Neves' game. I know like Gyökeres. I don't need to watch Gyökeres anymore. I know this guy's the truth. But yeah, Varela, like you and I said, I've been watching Varela since he was at Boca, and he was just awesome. He was immense for Porto in the Champions League last season. He had some big matches. I think was it Arsenal they played? Yeah, he just bossed that midfield. He was all over the place. I love me some Alan Varela. He is very good, but he is now going to be super expensive. So In any case, I'm going to go check that out, go see how Roma are getting on, go and see how Porto are getting on. Thank you guys. Oh, you guys, you can also go watch Samu, the striker we've been linked with in the last month or so at Porto, doing bits right now for Porto. So until then, enjoy the rest of your day. I will see you guys on the next one. Take it easy.